In the year 1187, an army surrounded Jerusalem. Inside the walls, tens of thousands of Christians waited. They knew what was coming. They had been told their entire lives what happens when a city falls to a Muslim army. And they had reason to believe it. Because 88 years earlier, when the Crusaders took Jerusalem, they did not simply conquer it. They filled the streets with blood. Men, women, children, slaughtered until the horses waded knee-deep through the gutters. That was the standard. That was how holy war was done. But the man outside the walls was not the Crusaders. His name was Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub. The West would come to call him Saladin. And on that day, he did something that baffled the Christian world. He did something that made his own generals question his judgment. He opened the gates, took the city, and spared nearly every soul inside. Here is the brutal truth. That single act of mercy haunted Europe more than any defeat ever could. Because this is what a different kind of enemy looks like. He was not born to rule. Saladin was a Kurd, an ethnic minority in a world dominated by Arab and Turkish warlords. His father served a man named Nur ad-Din, the ruler of Syria. And young Saladin? He preferred theology to warfare, books over blades. Let that sink in for a moment. The man who would one day unite the entire Islamic world and drive the Crusaders out of Jerusalem wanted to be a scholar. But here is what most people don't know. The Muslim world Saladin entered was not united. It was a fractured mess of rival dynasties, competing caliphates, and petty emirs who hated each other as much as they hated the Franks. Egypt was controlled by the Fatimid Caliphate, Shia. Syria was ruled by Nur ad-Din, Sunni. They were supposed to be on the same side. They were anything but. Saladin's first real test came in Egypt. Nur ad-Din sent him there in 1164, not to conquer, but to advise. The Fatimid Caliphate was crumbling. The Crusaders were circling. Saladin was supposed to be a supporting player. Instead, within a decade, he had outmaneuvered everyone. The Fatimid vizier, the Crusader armies, his own rivals in Nur ad-Din's court. By 1171, he had abolished the Fatimid Caliphate entirely and brought Egypt back under Sunni rule. He was 34 years old, and he now controlled the richest province in the Islamic world. Nur ad-Din, his master, began to see a problem. His Kurdish subordinate was no longer a subordinate. He was a rival. Nur ad-Din prepared to march on Egypt and bring Saladin to heel. But in 1174, before that army could move, Nur ad-Din died. 2 words. That is all. Natural causes. The only enemy Saladin could not defeat had done the work for him. Now, let's talk about what Saladin did next, because this is when he showed the world what kind of man he truly was. He did not celebrate Nur ad-Din's death. He did not dance on his rival's grave. Instead, he married Nur ad-Din's widow. He positioned himself as the protector of Nur ad-Din's young son. And then, slowly, methodically, over the course of 12 years, he absorbed Syria, Mosul, Aleppo, and the Hejaz into a single unified state. Not through massacre, not through terror, through patience, through marriage alliances, through the calculated distribution of wealth and land. He gave rival emirs reasons to join him rather than fight him. By 1186, the unthinkable had happened. The fractured Islamic world, Sunni and Shia, Arab and Kurd, Turk and Persian, stood behind one man, a Kurdish scholar who had never wanted to be a soldier. And now he turned his gaze toward the Crusader kingdoms. To understand what happened next, you have to understand Reynald of Châtillon. Ladies and gentlemen, If the Crusader states had a villain, it was Reynald. He was a French knight who had come to the Holy Land with nothing and clawed his way to power through sheer brutality. He had spent 15 years in a Muslim prison. When he got out, he was not humbled. He was enraged. Reynald built a fortress at Kerak, south of the Dead Sea, and from there he did something no Crusader had dared to do. He attacked Muslim caravans traveling between Damascus and Mecca. Caravans carrying pilgrims. Caravans carrying Saladin's own sister, according to some accounts. This was not war. This was piracy. And then Reynald went further. He built a fleet, sailed down the Red Sea, and threatened Mecca and Medina, the two holiest cities in Islam. He burned ships in the harbor of Jeddah. His men raided within striking distance of the Kaaba itself. Here is what most people don't know. Saladin did not retaliate immediately. He was a strategist, not a hothead. He knew that Reynald was baiting him. He knew that the Crusader states had a peace treaty with him, and he knew that breaking that treaty without cause would unite all of Europe against him. So he waited, and Reynald kept raiding, and Saladin kept waiting. Until 1187, Reynald attacked another caravan. Saladin sent messengers demanding the prisoners be released and the stolen goods returned under the terms of the treaty. Reynald laughed at them. He told Saladin to go to Mecca and ask his so-called prophet for help. And you know very damn well what comes next. Saladin assembled the largest army he had ever commanded. 20,000 men, cavalry, infantry, archers, volunteers from Egypt, Syria, and Mesopotamia. Here is the setup. The Crusader states had one rule for staying alive. Do not fight Saladin in open battle. Sit in your castles, let the heat and logistics beat him. They forgot the rule. Saladin attacked a small fortress called Tiberias, knowing the Crusaders would have to respond. And they did. The Crusader army, maybe 15 to 20,000 strong, left its water and marched across a dry plateau in July to relieve it. The commander was Guy of Lusignan, the king of Jerusalem, a man who was, to put it charitably, not a military genius. The real strategist, Raymond III of Tripoli, told Guy to hold position. Stay near water. Wait Saladin out. Guy ignored him. Saladin let them cook. His horsemen harassed them all day. They set fire to the dry grass so the smoke blew into Crusader faces. They made sure the army could not reach the lake. By nightfall, the Crusaders were dehydrated, exhausted, and surrounded. His men lit more fires around the camp, filling the air with smoke, making the thirst unbearable. By the time the army staggered toward two hills called the Horns of Hattin, the men were half mad with thirst. At dawn on July 4th, the attack began. It was not a battle, it was a slaughter. The infantry broke first, running for water. They got cut down. The knights charged and could not break through. The true cross, the holiest relic in Christendom, was captured on the field. King Guy of Lusignan was taken alive in his own collapsed tent on the hilltop. 15,000 prisoners. The entire Crusader field army gone. This is when the world saw who Saladin really was. He was famously merciful, but not to everyone. He offered King Guy a cup of water. Guy drank and handed the cup to Reynald of Châtillon, the warlord who had been raiding pilgrim caravans for years. Saladin stopped him.
Take it.
He looked at Reynald and spoke through an interpreter. You gave this man water, not me. The laws of hospitality do not protect him. Then he personally executed Reynald of Châtillon where he stood. The pirate of the Red Sea, the man who had mocked the prophet, dead at the feet of the Kurdish scholar who had never wanted to be a soldier. The captured Templars and Hospitallers he had put to death as well. Their holy war had met its end. But then Saladin turned to King Guy and said something remarkable. Kings do not kill kings. He spared Guy's life, sent him to Damascus as a prisoner of honor. This was not weakness. This was the most devastating form of power imaginable. Saladin was telling the world, "I do not need your blood. I am not you." With the field army gone, the kingdom had almost nobody left to defend the walls. Within months, Jerusalem surrendered. That loss is what launched the Third Crusade and the whole Richard the Lionheart versus Saladin story everyone half remembers. One bad decision about water. That is all it took. Saladin swept through the coast, taking Acre, Jaffa, Ascalon, one fortress after another falling without resistance. By September, he stood at the walls of Jerusalem. Inside was Balian of Ibelin. He was not a king. He was not even a great lord. He was a knight who had escaped Hattin and made his way to Jerusalem to evacuate his wife. But when he arrived and saw the city in chaos, no leadership, no plan, no hope, he did something extraordinary. He stayed. He organized the defense. He knighted every boy over the age of 16 because there were not enough soldiers. He armed the clergy. He turned Jerusalem into a fortress overnight. And then he made Saladin an offer. Surrender terms. Allow the Christians to leave peacefully and the city would be handed over without a fight. Saladin refused. He had offered Jerusalem terms months earlier and the city had mocked him. Now he would take it by force. The siege lasted 12 days. Saladin's engineers undermined the walls near the Damascus gate. The same section of wall, incidentally, that the Crusaders had breached in 1099. Balian knew the city would fall. He went to Saladin one final time. "You are standing inside Jerusalem in 1187. The walls are breached. The enemy is coming. And you remember 1099. You remember what your own people did. The rivers of blood, the burning synagogues, the severed heads." Balian told Saladin that if no mercy was offered, the defenders would fight to the last man. They would destroy the Dome of the Rock. They would kill the Muslim prisoners. They would burn the city to the ground rather than surrender it. And Saladin thought about it. The Kurdish outsider, the scholar who had spent 10 years of his life fighting a wasting disease that nearly killed him. The man who had united Islam through patience and marriage and generous land grants. He did what no one expected. He named a price. 40 days. Every Christian could leave. Men paid 10 dinars, women 5, children 2. And for thousands who could not pay, for widows and orphans and the destitute, Saladin simply opened the gates and let them go. For free. He even provided guards to escort Christian refugees to the coast so they would not be attacked by bandits along the way. Whew, buckle up, because here is the part that still echoes through history. When the Crusaders took Jerusalem in 1099, they massacred every Muslim and Jew inside the city. They burned the synagogues with people inside them. They waded through blood in the streets of the city where Christ was crucified. When Saladin took Jerusalem in 1187, he massacred no one. He converted the Christian churches into mosques, but he left the Church of the Holy Sepulchre untouched. He allowed Christian pilgrims to visit freely. He even invited Jewish families to return to the city from which the Crusaders had expelled them. Let that sink in for a moment. The Muslim commander showed more Christian mercy than the Christian commanders ever had. Here is what most people don't know about the Third Crusade. Europe emptied its treasuries to respond to Jerusalem's fall. The three most powerful monarchs in Christendom took the cross. Frederick Barbarossa, Holy Roman Emperor, Philip Augustus, King of France, and Richard the Lionheart, King of England. Frederick drowned in a river in Anatolia before ever reaching the Holy Land. Philip quarreled with Richard and went home. That left one man to face Saladin. And what happened between them is one of the strangest, most remarkable relationships in military history. They fought for 2 years. Richard took Acre. Saladin harassed his supply lines. They clashed at Arsuf, where Richard's disciplined infantry withstood wave after wave of Saladin's cavalry. Neither could decisively defeat the other. And somewhere in those 2 years of blood and dust and attrition, something shifted. They began to communicate. Richard sent Saladin gifts. Saladin sent Richard fresh fruit and snow from Mount Hermon when Richard fell ill with fever. When Richard's horse was killed at the Battle of Jaffa, Saladin sent him 2 fresh horses so the king would not have to fight on foot. 2 words, that is all. Mutual respect. Between men who were supposed to hate each other. They never met face to face. They negotiated through envoys. Richard proposed a wild plan. His sister Joan would marry Saladin's brother, and they would jointly rule Jerusalem. Saladin, to the shock of his advisors, considered it seriously. The treaty they eventually signed in 1192 was a Saladin compromise. The Crusaders kept the coastal cities. Christian pilgrims got free access to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem itself remained Muslim. Richard sailed home. Saladin returned to Damascus. He died the following year. March 4th, 1193. He was 55 or 56 years old. He had given away so much of his personal wealth that his treasury did not have enough money to pay for his funeral. They found a single gold dinar and 47 silver dirhams in his possession. The man who had ruled an empire from the Nile to the Tigris died almost penniless, because that is what mercy costs. Saladin was not a perfect man. He fought his own people as often as he fought the Franks. He spent years of his life consolidating power through methods that were political, sometimes ruthless. He could be cruel when strategy demanded it. Reynald of Châtillon learned that lesson firsthand. But when he had Jerusalem, the city that had been the object of holy war for a century, the city that the Crusaders had taken by wading through blood, he chose a different path. He chose to be the man the Crusaders could not be. And in so doing, he won a victory more devastating than any battlefield slaughter. He made the Crusaders confront what they had become. 7 centuries later, when the German Kaiser Wilhelm II visited Damascus in 1898, he made a pilgrimage to Saladin's tomb. He found it neglected, crumbling, forgotten. He laid a wreath and commissioned a new marble sarcophagus, a Christian emperor honoring a Muslim sultan, because their story was written down, preserved, and told again and again through the centuries. The story of the Kurdish scholar who built an empire, the merciful enemy who humiliated Christendom not by how he fought, but by how he forgave. A story that will never fade.